Tonight's meeting to order. If you will, please bow your head with me. Father in heaven, we just ask you to please guide us tonight as we make these decisions on behalf of the city and for those that live here. Father, we just ask that you protect our military, our nation, lead our state, federal, and local governments, Father. And we just thank you for such a beautiful day today, and we ask that you keep everybody healthy and happy. And we ask all these things in your most holy and glorious name. In your name we pray. Amen. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thorne.
Here.
Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Jordan.
Here.
Commissioner Brumbelow.
Here.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Here.
Commissioner Ashworth.
Here.
Commissioner Skeen.
Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from last month's meeting? And if so, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. You want a roll call vote, or you want me to just all in favor?
We can do a quick roll call. Commissioner Thorne.
Here.
Commissioner Brumbelow.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan.
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Aye.
Commissioner Carter.
I don't have a vote in it. Chairman, no vote tonight unless it ties. So. Motion to approve passes. Mr. Austin, we got our first item is a request to rezone 2.7 acres and 3 lots, lots 2, 3, and 4 of the Grove Park Professional Office Plaza subdivision from the O Office District to the R12 Single Family Residential District. The subject properties are located on both sides of Grove Park Office Drive, east of Interstate 55, west of McInville Road, in Section 7, Township 3 South, Range 7 West.
All right, thank you. As you stated, this is a rezoning proposal from the O District to the R12. I'll note that this was on the agenda for the February 8, 2022 meeting for a proposal to go to RM6 multifamily zoning. This was subsequently withdrawn by the applicant, so the new proposal for R12 is in front of you tonight. The background of the case, we've included a brief description of the R12 single-family residential zoning district, medium density category. A brief description of the uses, but largely this district is characterized as a 12,000 minimum square foot lot. The surrounding zoning districts are O and R12 and the existing Grove Park subdivision. These lots are currently platted with the Grove Park Professional Office Plaza subdivision. In this comprehensive plan designation as single-family low-density dependent, there's a brief description of what this means. Primarily, the plan recommends this as a zoning district of R12, R15, and R20. And so with that being said, the proposal does comply with the comprehensive plan. In your staff report, in the discussion, you'll see the applicant's responses to each of the required criteria for rezoning. And for the record, I'll just read the questions, and I'll let the applicant address, because the burden of proof does fall on him. So the questions of how the proposed amendment would conform to the general development plan. As I mentioned, staff does show that this R12 designation is in conformance with the development plan. Why the existing zoning district classification of the property in question is inappropriate or improper. The applicants conceded that the O zoning designation has been marketed for several years and not been acted upon, and so the surrounding zoning district of R12 would be more appropriate. And then the final criteria is that major economic, physical, or social changes, if any, have occurred in the vicinity of the property in question that were not anticipated by the general development plan and have substantially altered the basic character of the area, which make the proposed amendment to the zoning district appropriate. In our comments, the land use plan does show single-family low-density dependent as the recommended land use. We will note that the existing Grove Park subdivision is built out in recent years, and McInville Road and I-269 have been developed since that zoning was in place. So wrapping up, this is a request for lots 2, 3, and 4 of the Grove Park Professional Office Plaza from O to R12. If this is approved, the subsequent process would be a preliminary plat. And so one of the comments that's come up in our discussion was the surrounding covenants of the subdivision to be tied to this. And at the time of preliminary plat, I think that would be the appropriate time to discuss covenants. And for your reference, copies of the office district and the R12 zoning designations are included in your staff report, along with maps of the vicinity and surrounding zonings. There are proposed motions to approve, deny, and table in your staff report, whichever you see fit. The applicant is present, and we're available for any questions.
Questions or comments for Austin? Will the applicant please come forward, stating your name and address?
How are y'all? Vance Daly, my address is 140 East Copwell. I guess my home address is 1708 Roberts Cove. My office address is 140 East Commerce Street. I'm here on behalf of Michael Austin, who is in the room this time. At this meeting, I'm here, representing them. And it was stated, we were back here in February, and we're looking at the idea of doing townhomes. I don't know if y'all recall, but I barely made it out alive. I see Robert Carter laughing. I barely made it out alive. There's a lot of opposition. So we were wisely convinced to withdraw that and come back. And so we're here for R12. And as stated, I don't want to repeat and waste everybody's time. People got stuff to do. But in any event, that is a residential neighborhood, a residential area. The office park, which was hoping to be a great idea, never took off. And those lots sat bank-owned cheap, and nobody jumped on it and did it. And so R12 does conform with the development plan for Hernando. It conforms with the neighborhood behind it. I just drew a blank, the neighborhood behind it. But again, we're looking at going R12 this time to do the, I think it's the minimum of 12,000 square foot lots to build residential homes in it. I submitted, I didn't realize, I didn't have my affidavit of posted submitted, so I uploaded it today, but with a proposed plat as well that's going to put these in lots that conform with R12 to put residential homes in there, because y'all the planning commission, y'all know this, homes are hard to come by now because Hernando's growing, and as they stated, the neighborhood behind them is developed, and this does meet and conform with all the things. Again, the office park just never took off, and so we're here hoping to get it rezoned to R12 so we can put some homes out there and further help develop some more in Hernando. And again, Michael Austin is here tonight if y'all got questions directly for him as well. So,
is the current layout how it's depicted in the I guess lots 2, 3, and 4? Is that how they're intended to be?
and that's where I apologize. I'm not sure what made it. I can hand out.
That's what I've got. I
Oh,
may
so
have
those
that.
are those are the current, that's how it's currently platted, lots 2, 3, and 4. No, we are looking at going to, I'm upside down right now. 5 lots on the, what would that be, the south side? What are lots 2 and 3 going to 12,000 square foot lots? Oh, were they not listed right there?
I don't know which one's 2 and which
Yeah,
one's...
we don't have that sheet.
Oh, no, I'm talking, what are current, can I come close? I don't have what y'all have. Can I, which rules are? Can I come close?
You come on.
Point it out. All right, so yes. Well, these 2 lots become 5 lots. This lot becomes 2. I'm sorry, could y'all see that? The side that has 2 lots turns into 5 lots that are.
Can we look at that one?
Yes, absolutely. That's what we'll say. I can hand that out to you. I uploaded that today, and it was at the beginning, after that report was printed. Let me. Well, I can't find my copies now that I'm up here in front of you.
And I'll note too that the lot layout that you're seeing would be conceptual, would be required to come back as a preliminary plat. So that's kind of the next process.
That's what, I was just kind of getting ahead of it and trying to get...
Yeah, when I was-
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, no, it's the same with Commissioner Jordan. I was studying this, and these look, according to what we have, these look considerably larger than R12.
That's what it currently is,
Yeah,
correct.
so I wasn't sure how that lined up.
And have to apologize because I apparently only brought one copy of that one. I apologize. But, yeah, so it is, like I said, that was a 4-lot office park. There's a building on one lot right now that is a commercial building, that is the Austin Realty Group building that's been there for, how many years? 14 years. And so there are 3 empty lots that have, that are what we're looking at redoing to R12 to come back to replat into smaller than those lots to put houses. Didn't meet the R12, 12,000 square foot.
Is the road through there, I know it's got those trees in the median, or is that is that street dedicated to Hernando? Who's in charge of the trees and maintaining?
You know the answer to that? Who keeps the median?
I do voluntarily, since I've been there.
I didn't know if that was, has the road been dedicated to the city of Hernando?
I was there when the development, did it. No one was elected to take care of it since it's in front of my building, I took care of it.
I don't know the answer to that question.
I just didn't know if there were gonna be covenants involved with who's gonna take care of that or anything. And then, because I didn't know if it was city of Hernando property or if it was.
Mr.
Checking the
Jordan?
plat right now.
Yeah, it's something we'll have to research, depends on what the plat shows, for number one. If there have been covenants already recorded, with the office park, if they call for some kind of, property owners association to maintain it, that could come into play, because even though they bought it from the bank or the previous developer, that doesn't let anybody out of having to go by those covenants, because they're recorded, okay? So they may wind up having to continue to maintain that or turn it over to some kind of homeowners association that they could set up with the subdivision, but we'll just have to see where it all lies.
That was my next question, so that it could potentially get folded into that existing HOA or that existing subdivision, the Grove Park one right there?
Well,
Or is
it all
this
kind of
independent,
depends
separate?
on what they, they can't record a subdivision and fold it into the existing homeowners association unless the existing homeowners association says it's okay. All right. And whether or not they'd want that or not, okay? So it might become potentially a responsibility of however many lots they're dividing plus the office lot. We'll just have to see how it all lays out. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves on this one a little bit.
I get that, but, just trying to get an idea of what we're looking at. The, is that in the R12, is that what the neighborhood Grove Park is?
I believe so, yes. And this may even harm me, and I hate to even say it, but these were R12 lots back in, I think, 2005. It got rezoned as an office park. And so, again, that didn't work, so now we're trying to go back to R12. I say lot. I guess then, at that time, it was R12 dirt.
Do you
Not
have-
lots, but.
Have you seen the original 2005 R12 plat?
No, that's what I was just saying. No, I have not seen, because again, I do not believe these lots were lots. I don't guess they were lots at the time. Individual lots as an office park, lot numbers, and they were never part of the neighborhood behind it. I think it was just empty land that just never made it into the neighborhood and were done as an office park. And so it was an R12 area.
Gotcha.
Purchased, platted, I guess approved and platted as an office park. And so that's my misspeaking. There weren't lots at that time. You understand what I'm saying there?
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Daly? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here tonight for or against this application? And if so, if you'll please come forward, state your name and address.
My name is Matt Hodgson, 1408 Middle Buster. I'm just learning about this issue. I'm assuming this is right across from the dentist at the underpass. I thought I had that right in my head. It seems an appropriate use to make this more than an empty lot. If somebody was interested in living next to an office complex, which I would not be personally, but if somebody wanted to purchase a home there, I think it's a good use of the space, just as a general comment.
Anyone else in the audience that would like to come up and speak for or against this application? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to recommend approval of a rezoning request by Mr. Vance Daly on behalf of Michael J. Alston, owner of the property of 2.70 acres, identified as parcel numbers 307-307-280-00000-200, Lot 2, 307-307-280-00000-300, Lot 3, and 307-307-280-00000-400, Lot 4, located east of Interstate 55, west of Mackinville Road, and south of Byhalia Road in Section 7, Township 3 South, Range 7 West, from their current zoning of the O Office District to the R12 Residential Single Family District, medium density, based upon the following findings 1 through 3.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow,
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins.
The motion to approve passes.
Chair. All right, thank you.
I may have failed to note, but this application will be heard by the Board of Aldermen on July 19th.
All right, item number 2, Mr. Page, request for conditional use permit approval for a wrecker service and temporary storage of wrecked vehicles to be located on a .283 acre portion of a 1.3 acre lot located on the east side of US Highway 51, north of Pleasant Hill Road in Section 25, Township 2 South, Range 8 West, Zone C2 Highway Commercial District.
All righty. Mr. Michael Likens, who has Likens Towing Service, is requesting approval of this conditional use permit. Essentially, Paul Milan, who's the property owner, he owns a 1.30 acre tract there in just north of the intersection of, Pleasant Hill and US 51 on the right-hand side of the road. And on this particular piece of property, there are 2 existing buildings and then a substantial area behind the buildings. And Mr. Likens is looking at leasing 0.283 acres of that simply for the purpose of storing vehicles that he tows there. Okay? As you all, I'm sure, probably know, when people have accidents, a lot of times the wrecker service has to hold on to those vehicles for a relatively long length of time, waiting for the insurance to come through. So basically, he'll use it as an opportunity there, as well as towing for the Hernando Police Department. Basically, it is not his intention to utilize either of the buildings on the site for office purposes. He's just looking to lease some of the open space there in the back. Now, under the regulations for the C2 zoning district, which is what this property is currently zoned, it does allow wrecker service and temporary storage of junk cars as an allowable conditional use permit for that zone. like some of our other conditional uses, it does have certain, what I call threshold conditions that have to be met. One, that all junk cars are completely concealed from all surrounding property. Item number 2, that fences shall be solid board or brick masonry and of uniform construction and color. And then 3, that vehicles shall be only stored temporarily and no parts shall be removed. Okay? So those are threshold conditions in the zoning ordinance. Now, our design standards ordinance also has some requirements relative to wrecker services. In Chapter 7, the minimum standards of design, Section D, which deals with parking areas and loading areas, requires that all areas used for access, maneuvering, standing, parking, or display of motorized vehicles, trailers, boats, recreational vehicles, or manufactured or mobile homes, whether for customer or business purposes, shall be hard surfaced of either Portland cement or asphaltic concrete, maintained adequately for all weather use, and so drained as to avoid the flow of water across sidewalks. And more specifically, additionally, the following vehicle storage parking areas shall also be paved: vehicle sales, mobile and/or manufactured homes, wrecker service / impound yard, boat sales, marina, and tractor-trailer drop-off and/or service lots. So the design standards ordinance specifically requires that the storage area be paved. Okay? Now, as far as the subject property goes, it's bordered on the north by other C2 zoned and developed properties, as well as some M1 zoned property. To the east and south of the subject property is additional C2 zoned and developed properties, while to the west of the subject property on the other side of US Highway 51, it's also zoned C2 as well as some AR zone property, but it's currently developed as the First Baptist Church of Nesbitt. Future land use map of the city's comprehensive plan does designate these areas for neighborhood retail activity land use. Subject property is currently occupied, as I said, by 2 buildings. Essentially, there is a fence around portions of the property, and access to the rear is through a gate that lies between the 2 buildings on the property. Okay? Because the original development of this property predates the city's adoption of the design standards ordinance, there is unrestricted access across the entire frontage of the property rather than a defined entrance and exit, which our ordinance would now require. The primary entrance to the gravel area, as I said, is between the 2 buildings. We have not received any specific site plan, showing how the applicant plans to lay out the area that he's going to use for this purpose. I have included in my staff report, there are 6 criteria, of course, that the commission is to review in assessing whether to approve a conditional use permit or not. I have given you the applicant's responses to these 6 criteria, as well as staff comments relating to the 6 criteria. I'm not going to go into those in any detail since you've had the staff report for some time. If you have any specific questions about those, I'll be happy to answer them in a moment. Basically, as far as other comments go, I would note that if you elect to approve the conditional use permit, certainly you want to include as conditions of approval that it only be used for the parking of tow trucks, employee parking, and temporary storage of towed vehicles. The vehicle storage area shall not be used for commercial parking of 18-wheel semi-trucks and/or other forms of business trucks, tractor trailers, campers, recreational vehicles, etc. It's just to be used for the purpose that it has been requested. Stored vehicles shall not be stacked. Storage area shall be screened with solid board fence or brick masonry wall as required by the ordinance and shall be paved as asphalt or concrete. The applicant shall submit a site plan for the proposed vehicle storage area for review and approval by the planning staff. Now, as you know, we are required to set a time limit on all conditional use permits. And at this particular point in time, the applicant has not given us any proposal as far as time limit goes. So as you can see in the proposed motion to approve, I've left that blank to fill in if you choose to approve it. And of course, once it's approved, they'll have to submit for, business license, since those are tied to the address rather than the person, and any other permits that may be required. And then, of course, any person or persons aggrieved by your decision has the right to appeal it to the Board of Aldermen if they submit a written request to that effect within 10 days of your decision. As I said, I've given you a proposed motion with suitable findings, a motion to deny with suitable findings, and of course, you have the option to table the application if you choose to do so. So that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Mr. Page, on the word temporary, what is the structure of that word in the time essence, I guess you could say, because is that 2 years? Is that, do we set that tonight as well?
Well, I think that's something that you really need to pose to the applicant, because as I said, my experience with, towing companies has been typically, through accidents. And generally speaking, it takes a while for the, particularly if a car's been totaled, it takes a while for the insurance company to get around to cutting you that check. But in terms of whether or not there's an average time, I couldn't begin to tell you. But, through his experience, I would hope that he would have some idea along those lines.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Page?
And this may be a question for the applicant, but the 3/10 portion that he's planning on using, is that just the very rear of the property?
I believe I have in your staff report a drawing, or maybe I didn't get it in there. The drawing that I received from the applicant reflected, basically on the aerial photograph that you have in your packet, it's basically this area right behind the house with the green roof.
Okay.
Okay, kind of goes right behind it, and
So it's not that whole area back there?
no.
Where the
it's-
vehicles are currently lined up?
Yeah, a lot of that are like trailers and things. I couldn't begin to tell you what the total assortment is, but it's not currently being used by Mr. Likens at this time.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Page? Thank you, Mr. Page. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address?
Mike Likens, 1541 Mount Pleasant Road, here in Hernando.
Couple questions. Just so I'm clear, you own all this property
No,
currently?
sir, I'll be leasing just the portion behind it.
Oh, so you don't own the property, you just want to lease that 1/3, is that what it was?
Yes, sir. I'll be lining cars up down the side of the fence there, and this
Okay.
property will be sold, within the next couple of years.
Okay.
But I can't buy a lot and spend thousands of dollars paving it if I don't know it's going to work. Start small.
And Mr. Jordan's question earlier, about temporary. Could you help us define?
Most cars, after they're wrecked, customers call insurance immediately. I've never seen cars sit more than 6 months, but longer, but they won't be just
I think that's the definition that I was confused. This would be a temporary storage, regardless of how many cars or how long each car is there. But temporary storage generally for a period of time, and then it's no longer vehicle storage. It returns back to whatever use it is.
We're talking about two different things here.
Right, that's what I'm
Okay?
trying to get clear
Yeah,
with.
you know, temporary, in terms of Mr. Lyken's operation, you know, has to do with how long he has to hold a car, you know, for insurance purposes. You know, in terms of the time limit that the commission is setting, you know, that has to do with, you know, whether you want to approve this for a year or 5 years or, you know, 10 years or, you know.
Well, let's say we approve for a year. Would then Mr. Likens come back a year from now and resubmit an additional?
He can.
Is that how that would work?
You know, it's, generally speaking, you know, the commission has in the past, you know, if they've had concerns about a particular use, you know, they have established a relatively short initial period, you know, then come back, you know, to make sure that everything has worked out the way they thought it was going to work, and, you know, that the applicant has, you know, followed regulations the way he should and so forth. Then if that's, you know, if everything's okay, then they would grant an extension for a further period. It just kind of depends on how you feel about, you know, what he's proposing and the location and the surroundings and, you know, that sort of thing. Now, I will say one thing, which Mr. Likens and I have talked about, is the fact that the ordinance does require that the property be paved, in particular, you know, and some of the fencing requirements, you know, and as he's already mentioned, you know, he's only leasing this property and, you know, is trying not to get too invested in it. And I've explained to him that, you know, this is what the ordinance requires, okay? That if he doesn't want to do those things, he'll have to come back to you and seek a variance of those aspects. You know, so it's not something that we can address for him tonight, because, you know, we have to advertise and hold a public hearing just like we have for the conditional use permit this evening. But, you know, it's something you need to be aware of relative to this application.
What's the current in the back now? What's it back? It's gravel.
Mr. Likens, do you know if this is going to, this property is going to be impacted by any changes to the highway down there?
property. I was just friends with the owner. Nice place to park cars, just get started. I don't plan on staying there for a long time, maybe a year. I don't really just want to go out and spend a lot of money buying a property, paving it, fencing it, which I know I will have to do that the next time if everything works out within a year. But ask for your permission to use it for the time being.
Is there any fencing around it right now?
Yes, sir, there's a regular fence all the way around it. I believe there's barbed wire at the top, but it's not a brick or fence, a solid board fence all the way around it.
Chain link fence.
Yes, sir.
And there is a gate between those two buildings?
Yes, sir, there is. That's the only way to get to the back. Behind the property is a ditch, so there's no way to.
Hey, BJ, I got a question. What, refresh my memory, I think, did we not make the, I know this is not pertinent right now at the moment, but didn't we make the concrete company concrete their entire, or asphalt their entire?
No,
No, they did not.
yeah.
Like, as you understand, you have to come back and put before the year.
I know that to the south of there, that service station, gas stations being completely redone and everything, are they gonna have fencing on their north side that's on this,
Lunch house between that and the gas station.
oh, there's something between them?
Yeah.
There's two lots,
Oh,
two
okay.
homes or two businesses on that.
Bill Lanton's place, I think.
Yeah, but, I mean, it still would be between the service, there would still
Oh, I
be a
see. I see what you
fence
mean,
right
yeah.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
There
there
is-
is a fence around the whole entire both houses there.
That might benefit you, I mean, when you come back.
Sir?
That might benefit you to point out when you come back.
Stipulation of the type of fence that this is requiring is not what's in place now. So it's got to be a solid board to hide it or masonry, you
I
know,
can
solid.
speak with the property owner and see if that's something.
I believe right now it's just chain link, so that's, you know, another variance that we would have to request on, so.
And I may have misunderstood, my question was kind of too, are they gonna be putting in any kind of solid fence on that service station on that north side? Or will it just be open? I really don't.
I'd have to check this out. I doubt it, just because it's C2 to C2 zoning. And there's a lot of changes going on. I spoke with the mayor today, and he confirmed that the old card sales place there on the corner, and the building has been purchased by NDOT and set for demolition this year. So there are some major renovations coming to that intersection.
Again, tonight, this is strictly to, you're requesting a conditional use just to operate that type of business in that area. The other stuff you're requesting is going to be a whole new application with them to come back before us.
Yes, sir, they have me.
You mentioned you thought you'd only be there for about a year.
Yes, sir. Well, it might not be that long if I find a nice property I could use. I would be willing to, you know, talk to the bank to buy it, purchase it. I just care to do that upfront without knowing what.
Well, and the reason I asked, we have to put a time limit in.
Yes, sir. I
That's
think
what-
within a year, I would be, you know, financially stable enough to do that and buy a different property somewhere else.
Did you mention that this property might be up for sale for the current owner and you know him? Could you-
Yes, sir. I'm friends with Mr. Paul there, and he did state that he's going to be selling it within a year, 2 years, you know. He's not sure if it would sell quick or not, but he did make me aware of that before we started this process.
I know it has nothing to do with tonight, but is that something you might be interested in and just stay there?
I don't know. He's wanting a hefty price tag for that lot, so I don't know if I would be able to
Considering-
do that.
Considering, yeah, it's a good spot.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Lykin?
Thank you.
Sir. Is there anyone in the audience for or against this application? And if so, if you'll please come forward, state your name and address.
Again, my name's Matt Hodgson, 1408 Middle Buster. I see a lot of eyesores on this particular intersection in Nesbit. They've just done this new renovation on the northeast corner of the convenience store, which was just mentioned. The pawn shop is not a particularly attractive business. This is a huge traffic volume area, and to build something like this, even temporarily, detracts from inciting commerce in this location. One of my particular concerns is I believe that the road surface of 51, particularly coming from the north, is raised above the level of that lot behind the buildings. So an 8-foot fence would not obscure visibility from that angle of wrecked vehicles behind here. I hate to stand in the way of commercial endeavor of Mr. Likens or the ability of Mr. Milam to lease this space for commercial use, but I'm concerned about the attractiveness of such a business proposition in this location. Thank you.
Mr. Likens, what was in there before, do you know?
It's been a bunch of.
Oh,
I think before there was a car lot. I financed, but they moved off.
Anyone here for or against in the audience? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for a record service and temporary storage of junk cars for Likens Towing LLC to be located on a .283 acre portion of a 1.3 acre tract on the east side of US Highway 51 north of Pleasant Hill, Nesbitt Road in Section 25, Township 2 South, Range 8 West, more specifically known as 1630 Highway 51 South, for a period of I said you did say you were going to do it 1 year, right?
Yes.
So we'll do it for a period of 1 year expiring on June 14th, 2023, at which time the applicant shall return to the Planning Commission for an evaluation and a time extension request A through B.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Rumbelow,
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth,
Nay.
Commissioner Jordan,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Motion to approve the conditional use for 1 year passes. All right, Mr. BJ, you're up again. Request for a zoning variance to approve, looks like A, allow construction of a 6-foot tall galvanized chain link fence with an additional 3 strands of barbed wire along the top, along the sides, rear, and encroaching within the front yard setback of the subject property. And B, to allow the waiver of the type 10 buffer yard requirement between industrial zoned properties. C, allow the access drive around the east end of the building to be 20 foot wide rather than 25 foot wide, and allow the use of gravel paving for the access drive and the vehicle maneuvering area to the south of the building rather than asphalt or concrete. D, allow waiver of the curb and gutter requirement in portions of the vehicle movement areas as identified on the submitted site plan. E, allow waiver of the screening requirement for the dumpster located behind the building. And F, allow waiver of the opaque barrier requirement for parking spaces facing Vaden. This is for Tastemaker Foods located on Lot 9 of the first revision to the Hernando Industrial Park subdivision, which is located on the southwest side of Vaden Drive, south of East Oak Grove Road, and west of McCracken Road in Section 19, Township 3 South, Range 7 West, more specifically known as 495 Vaden Drive. The property is currently zoned M1 Light Industrial District.
All righty. Basically, what's going on here is Tastemaker Foods has an existing facility there on Vaden Drive. They added a couple of small additions to the rear of the building last year and are looking to add a further 20,000 square foot addition on the side of the building as part of this project. As a result, it kicked into play a lot of design review requirements affected by some of the changes that they're going to make, because they're adding onto the building, they're adding onto the parking lot in the front of the building, as well as, paving and curbing requirements, as noted. I won't go back through all of the proposed waivers. You have in your staff report the 4 criteria that we are to consider in approving a variance. Under the design review variance, one of the things to kind of keep in mind is that the design review variance is not intended as a mechanism to just not have to do something. The intent in the ordinance is to provide equal or better than the requirement of the ordinance. Is one of the criteria you're supposed to look at, whether or not what they're proposing to do is equal or better than what the requirement would be. As a result, the design review variance is really intended to be a mechanism to provide alternative plans that are different from, but equal to, or better than what the ordinance would require, okay? Basically, in terms of the conditions, I'm not going to go into those in any great detail since we've already had the reports for some time now. Basically, probably the key thing to look at is in terms of the variances, the fence and buffer variance, the applicant's response, the fence and buffer variance will make this site more consistent with other properties within the same district. We surveyed the neighborhood, and between Vaden Drive, Industrial Drive West, and McCracken Road, there are 22 developed properties. Of these 22 developed properties, although many have fences, only 6 have non-compliant fences located within the front yard setback, representing 27% of the total properties. Based upon this survey, the placement of 6 to 8 foot fencing in the front yard setback is neither common nor predominant. In practically all cases, though, whether the fencing involved is compliant or non-compliant as to location, the fencing does use galvanized chain link fencing rather than the required black vinyl coated chain link fencing included in the ordinance. So in that respect, galvanized chain link fencing is common, for the neighborhood. Concerning gravel pavement behind the building, the applicant states this area is located behind the building and its aesthetic value to the public is negligible. Additionally, the quantity and quality of the stormwater runoff is greatly improved by having the drainage course pass over this area of gravel prior to leaving the site. Within the neighborhood, there does not appear to be any property that has provided the required 10-foot wide type 10 buffer yard. However, in light of the fact the amendment requiring type 10 buffer yard has only recently passed, chances are most of these fences predate the ordinance amendment. Yeah, I think I got that out of order, but anyway, let's see here. In terms of the gravel paving, this request is very confusing. On the one hand, the applicant suggests that this access is essentially a circle drive and will largely act as a one-way drive. Therefore, the access drive does not need to be 25 foot wide, which is our typical requirement for two-way traffic. Okay? At the same time, the applicant states that they do not intend to stripe this area or install appropriate signage restricting it to one-way traffic. Additionally, the applicant's plans still identify the area behind the building as a turnaround area. And of course, if the property is allowed to be a gravel surface, it cannot be appropriately striped anyway. In evaluating any variance request, evidence of a non-economic hardship must be identified. A variance should not be granted in any instance where the cost is the only factor involved, and the applicant does not seem to provide any valid reason why this access drive should only be 20 foot wide instead of the required 25. Finally, the applicant argues that the quantity and quality of the stormwater runoff is greatly improved by having the drainage course pass over this area of gravel prior to leaving the site. The only problem with that is that's an opinion. The applicant did not submit any corresponding calculations or other documentation providing the validity of this opinion. you know? And that's something the Planning Commission, you know, we deal with all the time. When we have lawyers, engineers, other experts stand up and say, well, this is what it is, without telling you why that's what it is, or how that's supported by their work, you know? And just because somebody's a lawyer or an engineer doesn't mean that their opinion is golden. You know, you have to back that up with actual evidence. As far as the curb and gutter goes, we noted that the previous item C, the applicant expresses the opinion that areas where curb and gutter have been omitted have been done so to promote sheet flow to low-sloping grass-lined ditches, which will reduce the concentration of stormwater runoff to minimize the occurrence of erosive flow velocities and represents improved stormwater management strategies and better meets the requirements of the grading and stormwater management goals of Chapter 7C 1 and 2 of the Design Ordinance. However, again, the applicant does not submit any evidence to support these statements or explain how this alternative approach provides an equal or better standard of protection and aesthetic value than the strict requirement of the ordinance, particularly in light of the fact that the retention basin for this project is located to the rear of this building, while the curb and gutter that is proposed to be eliminated is located in front of the building and is intended to promote sheet flow drainage to the east directly into the stormwater drainage system, avoiding the proposed detention. As far as the dumpster enclosure goes, the area behind the building is screened from public view by the existing building and the proposed addition. It also lies below the grade of the surrounding properties further to the west, to the south, and to the north. Therefore, the dumpster could be considered adequately screened from public view. However, the applicant's submitted site plan does not exactly locate where the proposed dumpster is going to be. Additionally, the applicant argues that by locating the dumpster within an enclosed and gated area, that somehow promotes severe issues with mice, rats, and other vermin, more than if the dumpster is left completely out in the open. I just find that reasoning to be a little bit unclear. And then finally, on the opaque barrier, the applicant argues that the roads in this area have a rural cross-section where stormwater runoff is conveyed to roadside ditches, and that this requirement would produce an obstruction to that conveyance. However, the opaque barrier requirement is only applied where parking spaces face the adjacent street, the intent being to screen the grill work of the parked vehicles and prohibit the headlights from the vehicles spilling onto the adjacent public street, potentially blinding associated traffic, in addition to enhancing the aesthetics of the streetscape of the project. In this particular case, the only parking spaces that would be impacted, by this opaque barrier requirement are parking spaces where the applicant is also proposing to install curb and gutter. Therefore, the argument that this requirement would somehow obstruct the flow of drainage into the adjoining roadside ditch does not hold together, since the opaque barrier would be located where the applicant is already proposing the installation of curb and gutter, which of course prohibits the sheet flow of drainage. It's not in an area that they're proposing to not build the curb and gutter. In terms of that variance about not putting in curb and gutter, these areas are not the ones where they're proposing to eliminate the curb and gutter. So the drainage isn't going to flow to the opaque barrier and be obstructed. It's going to flow to the curb and gutter they're proposing to build and be obstructed. Additionally, the argument that the opaque barrier requirement is not generally applied to other properties in this district or a similar zoning may have been pertinent to criteria number 2. It is not pertinent to this criteria, which deals with whether the proposed alternative provides an equal or better standard of protection and aesthetic value. Basically, the only thing that I think I would mention as part of the my other comments is simply that there is a platting issue that we've discussed that needs to be addressed, but that does not directly impact this decision. I have given you a proposed motion to approve, as well as a proposed motion to deny And of course, you always have the option of tabling if you feel like you need more time. Now, one thing I would like to mention about these motions, they are structured as if you are approving all the variances or none of the variances, okay? You can, of course, make a motion to approve variances A, D, and F, you know, and not the other ones, okay? So I want you to understand, you know, that it's not one way or the other. You know, you do have the option to approve some and deny some if that is what you choose to do. You know, we will, of course, adjust the findings as necessary to address those changes, you know, if you decide to go that way. So with that, that's my report, unless anyone has any questions.
Questions or comments for Mr. Page?
Is there a fire hazard involved in the road being only 20 feet instead of 25 feet wide? Is that be addressed
We-
with the fire marshal?
It's been referred to the fire marshal for directional traffic. There is a relaxation of 25 feet. And then there's a weight requirement that's provided, so even if it's gravel, it's still required to support, I think it's 70,000 pounds.
Okay.
So whatever's approved tonight would be subject to fire marshal's comment.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Page? Thank you, sir. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address?
Right. My name's Taylor Webb. Address is 1355 Linfield, Memphis, Tennessee. And Mr. Reed is also here this evening in case he can provide any clarity on any general items. I don't want to rehash everything one by one, but there's a couple things that are a little different. The allowing construction of the 6-foot tall fence, it's more that we're extending an existing fence that's 6 foot tall, galvanized, and attaching to our neighbor's fence that's 6 foot tall and galvanized. The type 10 buffer yard requirement, the main thing that was odd about that is there's a large canopy tree every 40 feet that would be also required around the entire property. I was unable, I didn't cast the net quite of 27 properties that Mr. Page did, but I wasn't able to find anywhere where that was the case, even in things that have been built post of the most recent standard. In fact, the type 10 buffer didn't even make it into the design review. It only lives in the zoning ordinance, kind of buried in the buffer requirements. The item about the access drive being 20 feet wide rather than 25 feet wide, I had a little different take on this as well, of the 25-foot requirement. The way the ordinance reads is it's a 25-foot aisle width wherever there's 90-degree parking. The ordinance is mute on anything regarding what a minimum aisle width is, and those would generally be driven by fire code, which in this case is 20 feet, a maximum of 250 feet, in which case you have to have a turnaround unless it's a circle drive. Or if you have a hydrant in that area, you have to have a 5-foot pull-off for passing traffic. The curb and gutter requirement, curb and gutter is offered throughout the public parking area. The only place it isn't offered is adjacent where it goes into the ditch, which goes into the detention facilities in the back. It's on the grading and drainage plans. I don't know if that made it into your packet. And as far as, I guess, documentation on whether pervious areas are better for stormwater, I just assumed it was so well known, I didn't need to provide it. There's plenty of Memphis or Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality. It's in their standard erosion control methods that this is how you reduce stormwater runoff and increase stormwater quality. I'd be happy to provide that. I guess You'd have to take my word for it. I'm licensed, I've done a bit of it. The gravel behind, kind of staying with this, the gravel behind, most of the design review items are of aesthetic value. They're not necessarily a function. The only thing it would provide back there would be something aesthetic, and that would be behind the building. Additionally, the plan is to continue growing this building and growing jobs out to the east. So anything you build over there as far as curbing will have to be destroyed. Other than being inefficient, that's not really the concern of this board. And then the opaque barrier, I was just more concerned about being allowed for it to be vegetation as opposed to some sort of bricked wall thing that was one of the requirements. And the dumpster screening behind the building, again, it's almost 500 feet from the road to where this dumpster would be. It was generally shown, again, there's site plans and construction drawings initially filed. That's how we ended up here with the variance. And that's really all I have. It might be, unless you've made up your mind, it might be, if I can answer any questions for you, I'd be happy to.
Any questions, comments from Mr. Webb?
Yeah, on your site plan,
Yes.
or the site plan I have, got penciled in all of these except E. There for the dumpster. On this site plan.
Yes, so the E, we just sketched that in to give you a basic idea of where each of these requests are on the site. He may be able to provide where the dumpster is. It wasn't specifically called out in the.
Yeah, there were a set of stamped construction plans that preceded this.
Where is the dumpster at?
The dumpster would be in the new drive, where it comes down the east side of the building and then makes a turn. It would be right there in the low spot. It would actually be recessed. But no more than 24 inches because you don't want to have to put up a railing. And also the pavement is intended, the 20-foot drive on the side is not gravel. It's intended to be pavement. Pavement extends all the way to or concrete or asphalt pavement extends all the way to the rear of the building. It's only the back area.
So that current area in the back is currently gravel?
It's currently gravel, and that was kind of another issue, is the only thing that would be gravel would probably be, 2,000 square feet, and doing that would apparently trigger having to pave an existing 30,000 square feet of gravel.
I'm just trying to orient myself.
Sure.
So the current, I'm looking at a satellite map, so I can orient myself.
The two site plans weren't included in the...
Yeah, just photos. But I'm looking at I have a
We've got the
satellite.
site plan here. Matt just could point at it for him. I don't know.
So, if I understand, the current gravel in the back, you're going to extend that over to the east.
I mean, it would only be wide enough
20
to-
feet
for
instead of
for the
25
turning
feet.
movements of getting a truck around. It's not.
But that's the variance of narrowing that from 25 to 20.
No, that's the drive going up and down the east side of the building.
That's the asphalt drive.
That's the asphalt drive. The request is...
Well, it's marked C on both, the asphalt and the gravel, so is it 20 feet all the way around to the back?
No, just the area east.
So just the
Going down the
gravel-
east side
I mean, the
the
paved
building.
proposed on the east side.
Yes, sir.
And then only up to the back of the edge of the building, and then that's gravel, or what you're proposing is continue gravel into the existing gravel in the back.
It basically, to connect the gravel to the pavement is... Because with the exception of, I think, 20 feet of curb and gutter in the parking area, and then the opaque barrier, everything in front of the building, and I guess also the fence, extending the existing fence, the front of the building is in substantial compliance. it's in the back, behind the building where, you know, this is an industrial area where the magic happens, that it's geared more towards what we're trying to do here and produce here and create jobs, as opposed to interfacing with the public.
So, I mean, if I'm understanding, you're fine with the opaque barrier as long as it's not brick?
Right, if it's a vegetative, usually I think
And I
a
think
dense
that's allowed.
hawthorn type thing I've seen. And I guess my thing is, would that be only in part of the new parking, or even the existing parking, we would have to install?
I think Mr. Page is going to.
Yes, sir.
There's one thing I was going to mention, that the opaque barrier does allow for a vegetative barrier. You know, it allows for, you know, closely compacted, bushes at least 3 foot tall at planting. Okay? So it does allow a vegetative opaque barrier. In fact, that's probably the most common form of opaque barrier we get. In terms of, does it apply to the existing building? I think that's open to interpretation.
Right.
Okay? I would think, however, that, you know, that the company, you know, wanting the front of their building to look as nice as possible would be interested in expanding it in front of the existing building, but I don't know, I could be wrong. The other thing I did want to mention was the fact that one of the reasons why this issue of the gravel has come up is the fact that, you know, when the small additions were made to the rear of the building, you know, we raised the issue of paving that gravel at that time. We were approached that because of this expansion, that the existing drive would be covered up with the new building, and that they didn't want to pave that drive because they just have to rip it up when they put down the new building. And we understood that, and we agreed to allow them to leave it as gravel until the expansion was made. We did inform them that at the time that the addition was brought forward and the old drive, you know, was going to be abandoned, that if they decided to, you know, maintain the drive, a new drive, a completely new drive around the addition, that would have to be paved. And
it is.
The tastemaker gave us that, a letter to that effect, that they understood that that was to be done. Now, all I can tell you, Taylor, is that the drawing that we have, you know, the gravel part starts before you get around the back corner of that building.
Yeah, the response to the initial comments, and then also the site plan that was subsequently submitted with variances and without variances.
Right.
Shows that pavement extending to the rear of the building.
Okay, that's not what I got.
What you got.
It's kind of like right at the corner is where the pavement is.
On the initial plan submittal,
Well, whatever I
It
got,
was
with it-
stopping
what I got with
there.
the application,
and then on the variance application,
that's
it
what I'm
should be
talking about.
yeah, it should be extending to the southeast corner of the building.
I guess that's what you call the southeast corner. Okay.
And in the same vein, this, in the mid-future, will also be ripped up, but it seemed important. So yeah, of course, go ahead and pave it for this item. But the area in the back, the trucks come in, sometimes they queue up, sometimes they wait. All that ends up doing is, I think we have to put down another few inches of stone every year, and it would just be rubbled asphalt with the vehicle movements that are happening back there.
And you understand if the fire marshal says that 20-foot wide width for that road isn't acceptable?
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, that, just like ADA supersedes anything we decide, yeah. Yeah, anything regarding like, any of that, yeah, of course.
Questions or comments from Mr. Webb?
Yeah, just on the curb and gutter, I'm trying to study that. And if you can help me, so there's current curb and gutter. Help me again.
All right.
So,
All the parking areas across the north part of the building
in the front.
will have curb and gutter, except for, there's an area of the loading dock that sheet flows into a low flow area to get into a culvert. And
that's
then the east edge of the pavement does not have curb and gutter because that also sheet flows into a ditch. Oh, wow.
And because y'all
It's printed
made-
to a
Is
tiny
this,
scale. Yeah, so all this area here has curb and gutter,
where again?
right here.
Okay,
This is all curb and gutter. This is all curb and gutter.
gotcha.
This does not have curb and gutter because
Oh, that's the sheet flow you're talking about?
this sheet flows into here, into a culvert, and then there's a ditch that goes down here to a detention area,
Okay.
because this will be getting extended as the building grows.
So it's this area right here we're looking at, the waiver,
Correct.
not up here?
Right.
Because that's the letter pointing here was throwing me off. Okay. Now that cleared up, thank you.
Yeah, essentially, the east side of the dock where it sheet flows into a swell that goes through a culvert, and the east side of the access road around the east of the building. There, curb and gutter is omitted there. And there where the actual parking spaces are, it is wrapped in curb and gutter.
And that's a potential area of expansion.
Right, and then, yeah, as it goes on, these will be brought on, I think it's almost thirds till eventually it matches what the existing building is, and this is a third of that. And then there'd be two more. Maybe things go well, all in one, but, I mean, business-wise, not.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Webb?
The other one is like we kind of glossed over, it. The type 10 buffer requiring the trees every 40 feet. That's, I don't know if that's a big ask or not, but it's a substantial one as far as the planting of the tree. I mean, because first of all, we're still another 200 feet from the adjacent property. The property behind us is not developed. I think it's still forest land, and it's also a heavier intensity of M2. And then the west is already, I mean, we're not building on that side.
You all own this whole property here all the way up to the east?
Yes, up to the other, up to the other existing.
We'd just go ahead and put a buffer in way over there now, just get it out of the way, knowing you're going that way.
I don't know, what is that, what's the length of that fence?
I don't know.
I think it's,
100 feet or more?
I think it's a little more than 100 feet.
600 feet.
600 feet?
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Webb?
I'm sorry y'all didn't get full-size plans. I feel it tells a better story than 8.5 by 11. Apologies. All right, thank you.
Are you withdrawing the opaque barrier variance request?
Yeah, I take it your word, there's the vegetative option. Perfect, yeah, as long as that's. And would the existing need to be improved as well?
I don't think we've got any authority to make you do that, do we?
Yeah, I think you might.
Do what?
If it's an expansion more than a certain amount,
He
I
has to
think
be-
you have to bring up other items.
If the existing.
Is that a fever dream? Or I think there's something,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the initial question.
It's a non-conforming status, and that's 50, but the question is, would he need to improve the opaque barrier in front of the existing parking spaces, abutting the addition that he's just withdrawn? And
oh, it's a few pushes. No, we'll sort it out.
Okay.
That's only 3 feet, right?
I'd like to know the answer, though. I'm kind of curious.
So a legal non-conforming, if you improve more than 50%, is when you lose that status. And so with this addition, I don't know the square footages or numbers, but it's probably really close if it's not 50%. He's willing to comply. I think it's probably a good issue.
Is there anyone here for or against this application? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Justin Reed, 2073 Green Chase Drive, Hernando. We bought the building in 2016, I think, came in front of the Planning Commission 2017 to get things worked out for our construction. We did construction, moved in 2019, and at a point where we need to add on. And I guess since then, we've added 7 new positions. This addition would add another 10. Average wage, $22. A lot of, when we moved down here, a lot of our staff moved to Hernando. Great long-time employees. I've got some 30, 35-year employees. I think average is around 13, 14 years for employees, tenure-wise. When we originally did the plans, that the gravel drive in the back is a fire truck turnaround for I guess the tower that's for a blending operation. Like to keep it gravel. At some point after we get finished going out to the east, the only other way we could go would be to the south on the back side of the building. We do a lot of different products for all different kinds of people. Some people here in town, some people here in Memphis, stuff all over the country, export some stuff too. It's, anyway, that's all I got.
Is there anyone else here for or against this application? If so, please come forward, stating your name and address. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the following variance request for Justin Reed of JR Squared, owner of the property, to allow construction of a 20,000 square foot addition to the existing Tastemaker food facility located on Lot 9 of the first revision to the Hernando Industrial Park subdivision, located on the south side of Maiden Drive, south of Oak Grove Road, and west of McCracken Road in Section 19, Township 3 South, Range 7 West, more specifically known as 495 Maiden Drive. The variance is being approved, or following A, B, C, D, and E.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow,
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins.
The motion to approve variances A, B, C, D, and E passed. All right, Austin, we got the request to approve a zoning setback variance for James Jeffries to allow construction of a storage shed within the side yard of his lot rather than within the required rear yard and located 2 feet from the side property line rather than the required 5 foot. To be located on Lot 65 of Copperleaf at Arbor Point subdivision, more specifically known as 537 Howell Way, on the south side of Howell Way, west of Memphis Street in Section 12, Township 3 South, Range 8 West, currently zoned in the R10 Single Family Residential District.
Yes, sir. As you noted, Mr. Jeffries requesting to construct a 12 by 20 detached storage building. The subject property is 0.36 acres. The home was built in 2020. It's 2,123 square feet. And I note that to say that the building is in conformance with the size, just not necessarily the setback. As you noted, the R10 designation, single-family residential, does permit accessory buildings and uses, as noted in the staff report. The requirement is to be 10 foot from the rear line, 5 foot from the side. And as you noted again, it's constructed 3 foot from the residence, and with the size of the structure, it's going to be 2 foot from the property line. In the discussion on the special condition circumstances that exist with this piece of property, the applicant notes topography of the lot and drainage prohibit the structure from being located in the rear yard. And I will note that staff has been to the site and is abutting properties, and there's a significant drainage problem to the rear. The city engineer is working with the property developer to alleviate some of these concerns. But as of yet, there's a topography issue and a drainage issue. The literal enforcement of the provisions of these standards deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties within the same district. And the applicant response is that all other lots in the subdivision have a similar drainage pattern. And I will note, most of the lots on Howell Way, their drainage structure is their backyard with the topography of the lot. It drains out and in between some of the structures, and so the shape of Mr. Jeffries' lot is a bit odd and leaves him almost nowhere to put the shed. And then the conditions don't result from Mr. Jeffrey, and the lot was created by the developer prior to the purchase of the property. And as I noted, the home was built in 2020, and the subdivision was recorded in 2019. The applicant did meet with his neighbors, and he's provided a signed copy of his neighbor's approval. We will require a building permit for the site. We did contact the city engineer since this structure will encroach inside of the utility easement on the side. And as long as a permanent foundation is not poured, it can be approved with variance tonight. If anyone disagrees with the decision of the board tonight, you can appeal in 10 days. It'll be heard by the Board of Aldermen. The proposed motions are included in your staff report to approve, deny, or to table. The applicant did provide an exhibit showing where the structure is proposed to be located and some of the drainage concerns that I mentioned for his rear property line that prohibits him from being able to construct it at that location. And so with that being said, the applicant is available, and we're also available if you have any questions.
Questions or comments for Austin? Thank you, Austin. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address?
Name's James Jeffrey, 537 Howell Way. I'm in the flood zone, so that's why I'm asking for the variance. So I would like to put it in the back. It's just not gonna happen. It floods. I mean, I don't know if you have pictures. I don't know what you guys have. But, I should have brought videos.
There are some pictures in here that show
Okay.
standing water.
Yeah, so, I mean, I get 5 inches of rain running down through there. And it's a shed, so it's not permanent or anything. It's just on skids. And one of the reasons I put it where I want to right now is that I'm talking to the neighbor. He doesn't have any windows on that side, so he doesn't have to look at it. I said, oh, cool.
I did notice you got your neighbor to sign off on it.
Yes.
Thank you for that. For me, at least.
Questions or comments for Mr. Jeffrey?
No, other than just the comment has nothing to do with you, sir. It's just, it's a shame you have to come before us to ask for this because you can't put that in
Totally
your
agree.
backyard.
And plus it cost me $50, so I thought, well, I'll pay for the air conditioner here.
That's all I just wanted to say
Okay.
that.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. Appreciate your service as well.
Thank you. I do have one thing I'd like to add. It has nothing to do with any of this. Can we turn the Eagle around so it's flying this way? It just doesn't look right flying the other way.
It's face forward.
It's facing this way.
It is? I could go lose them. I'm looking at the head. It looks like it's,
It follows you.
again, that's what happens when you get old. Thank you.
Is there anyone here for or against this application? If so, please come forward, state your name and address. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a zoning setback variance by James Jeffrey, the owner of the property, to construct a 12 by 20-foot detached storage building 3 feet from the residence and 2 feet from the west side of the property line, as represented on the submitted site plan, granting a variance of 3 feet from the 5-foot side yard setback requirement on the subject property identified as 537 Howell Way, parcel number 3081.123.1.0-00065.00, 3,600 acre tract located on the south side of Howell Way, west of Memphis Street, north of Whitfield Drive, and south of Abbey Lane, in Section 12, Township 3 South, and Range 8 West, more specifically known as 537 Howell Way, based upon the findings set forth in A, B, C, and D.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thorne,
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow,
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth,
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan,
All right.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Motion to approve passes. All right, Austin, the item number 5, request to approve a project text and preliminary site plan for Gilbreth Ridge PUD, 54.13 acres, 99 residential lots, located south of Holly Springs Road and west of Getwell Road in Section 21, Township 3 South, Range 7 West, Zone PUD.
Yes, sir. As you mentioned, Mr. Greg Smith of Mendrop Engineering Resources is representing Bridgestone, who's the owner of the property. This property, the story in the property is a little bit complex. The original request was for an R12 rezoning, and at the Board of Alderman meeting, the application was revised to include PUD designation as their. So the property is zoned PUD on the map because that application was subsequently approved. With that being said, it's with the understanding that the plan text was going to come back at a later date. So that's what's before you tonight, is the plan text and maps and lot layouts for that PUD of Gilbreth. So there's really 2 parts to tonight's discussion. One would be the zoning designation, because an amendment to a PUD or PUD text is treated the same as a rezoning. The Second would be to consider the criteria for preliminary subdivision, because the PUD designation serves as the preliminary plat. So what you see tonight would be the finished product, with the lot layouts, the number of lots, the sizes of the lots, the roads, everything like that. So I'll split my presentation briefly into the zoning portion and then more so into the preliminary subdivision portion, just because the property is already zoned PUD and the plan text is being submitted. So the future land use map identifies this as master plan residential low density. And with this master plan residential low density, PUD is a recommended zoning district. So the zoning is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and the density of 1.8 units to the acre is also in conformance with that plan. Is compatible with the surrounding zoning districts of Jefferson, St. Ives, and Tampa Ridge, which is actually located in Hernando County. In the discussion portion, since this is being treated as a rezoning, the three criteria there are technically what we need to consider. But if you have any questions on the lot layouts, the sizes of the lots, anything to do subdivision specific, now is kind of the time to ask, because the plan text is in front of us and does serve as that preliminary plat. The required documentation for a PUD is listed in the staff report, and all has been provided with the applicant. The minimum house square footage is proposed at 2,400 square feet, and there are 99 lots proposed. There are proposed connections to Jefferson, and a stub is provided to St. Ives to the southwest portion of the property. And in the proposed motion, I'd like to include that the stub be planned to connect to St. Ives for general traffic circulation and for satisfaction of the fire code. The common open space is 11 acres, or approximately 20% of the site. The applicant is proposing a dock on the lake and some benches and walking trails throughout the common open space. There is an exhibit provided in the attachment. A few notes of the development plan. All proposed improvements are to be in accordance with the City of Hernando's design regulations concerning road cross sections for curb and gutter width of the property. The minimum lot size is 9,600 square feet, and it does range up to about 20 to 25,000 square feet, which is generally compatible with what's around it. The proposed setbacks of the homes are front yard setback of 30 feet, a side yard of 8 for a sum of 15, so the homes will have to be 15 feet apart, and a minimum rear yard setback of 20 feet. We would like to note that Gitwell and Hollow Springs Road shall be dedicated and constructed 53 feet from center line. That's in accordance with our subdivision regs. And there are some general covenants provided for home square footage and pitches of roofs, which is supposed to be a minimum of 10-12. If approved, we would request that all construction plans be submitted to county engineering or city engineering prior to commencement of grading. And the applicant is available, Mr. Greg Smith from Mendrop Engineering, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions or comments for Austin?
And I guess, do we know how many lots? Because this is kind of like an R8, the equivalent of an R8 rezoning. I don't realize it's a PUD, but if it was being rezoned, it would be an R8. Is that fair?
It's the minimum lot square footage is 9,600 square feet. If you eliminated one or two lots, you would probably pursue an R10 straight zoning.
I think that may answer my question too. So there's only one or two lots that are under 10,000?
If you go to the last page of your physical staff report, it's pretty hard to see because it's printed small, but if you look at the lots along Gitwell Road are where those, I think it's 2 lots are below 10,000 square feet. On the road layout page, the very last page of that staff report, on the flip there. And so it's 2 lots about 9,000. Everything else in the subdivision is between 12 and 14,000. And the number of lots, to answer that question, is 99.
Yeah, I don't see that page.
What page are you?
The black and white one at the very back.
Oh, it's this extra one.
Oh, it's a, okay.
Yeah, it's tiny just because that's what we had to print it, but if you look along Getwell Road, those two lots below 10,000 are the two that are,
Gotcha.
so it's a little bit deceiving.
I didn't even see the square footage on there.
You need your grandma's magnifying glass, man. I did kind of a quick analysis on it, you know, and based on that map that Austin was speaking of, you know, there are probably only in the neighborhood of a total of maybe 6 lots that are under 12, you know, because although there's a few that are in the 9,000 square foot range, you know, the 9.6 being the smallest, there are a few that are like between, say, 10 and 11,000 square feet. But as I said, out of 99 lots, there's only a total of about 6 that fall in that smaller range.
Yeah, they run the gamut, according to this, 36,000 to,
I'm looking
yeah,
at this, and maybe I need my glasses, but lot 29 and 30. Is that a typo? Is that 32,000 square feet for lot 29?
I think the shape of the lot, it's a little bit odd with the ditch of how it runs and the flow of the road, so
Oh, I see.
there is one that's almost an acre, 36,000 square feet.
I see the lot line, or I guess the buildable part of the creek, I guess, right there.
what is Jefferson Place, or are they a PUD, and so is St. Ives, are they a PUD too? Okay.
In part. The original part was PUD, and then the back part is R12.
I mean, is it kind of consistent with an R12 subdivision?
Roughly.
Both of those?
12, 14,000 square foot lots.
Gotcha. Which is, except for those few exceptions.
Yeah.
And I don't have it in front of me, but BJ, if you can remind me, we were doing the mailbox. There's one mailbox station area here for 99 homes. Is that right? Does that fall within the new ordinance with the mailbox area?
I think,
We're per phase on that one. Aren't we?
yeah,
When that, I can't remember how many homes per mailbox area or something.
well, I think originally
I have it in front of me.
there was going to be, I have to go back and check my ordinance, but I believe it was
80, the number 80 comes to
per
mind.
phase, you know, would be the maximum per phase, would be 80 in one location.
So would that mean, because there's 99, they would have to have two back?
If they were doing it all
Same
as
time.
one phase, you know, obviously if they do it as several phases, they'll have to have, you know, station per phase.
Any other questions or comments for Austin or Mr. BJ? Thank you. Will the applicant please come forward, state name and address?
Good evening, I'm Greg Smith with Mendrop Engineering, 2595 Country Club Road, Senatobia. I'll be brief. The layout hasn't changed a great deal from which we originally submitted. We added a entrance into Jefferson Estates, and we deleted one on Getwell Road. Some of the neighbors were concerned about that southern access we had, so we've done away with that one to try to honor the wishes of some of the neighbors there. There's not really any other things I could add to that layout other than there's no less than 5 places that we could put mailbox, and we'd be glad to do that because we do plan to develop this in one phase. So we'll pick a location toward the opposite end of the thing on some of that common area, and we can build another one there. as far as the rezoning part of it and the questions, there's nothing happened out there between the last time they got zoned and now that would warrant a change in those comments or the responses to the questions. So that'd be the same as what we provided last time, and I can go into that if you need me to. But other than that, the entrance to St. Ives, we did add that one too. The property stops short of the St. Ives property. There's a ditch on the St. Ives side of this property that would have to be crossed to do that, but we did stub out to it, so there could be a tie made. But other than that, I don't think there was any other changes of significant note. I could answer any questions you have about it, be glad to.
Well, that stub out to St. Ives, is St. Ives got, is their plan to stub back into that, or?
Right now, they're showing a cove down there. I don't think it's been constructed, and I think this layout that's shown on this plan is one of the preliminary layouts of St. Ives. But no, there has not been a connection made as of yet. And like I said, the ditch is entirely on the St. Ives side. Our property line stops at the top bank on the our side. So in order to construct a cross, we'd have to have permission from the owner to do that.
Mr. Chairman.
But we've done all we could by taking to the property line.
Yes, sir.
Just to address part of Mr. Thorne's question. In the original application for St. Ives, it was shown as a cul-de-sac on that side of the development. In the approval by the board of that original plan, the board required that that not be a cul-de-sac and go through. Okay? I will say that I don't think, this happened long enough ago that I can't begin to tell you, why or what for, but I don't think we ever got a revised plan for our files that showed it going through. But that is part of the board approval. I'm sure that's what Greg's referring to. He probably saw that old plan and just went off that.
Yeah. And the only other comment I may have, because the question could be asked, there's a ditch that separates us from St. Ives. A lot larger ditch that's warranted there. It's just what we call an excise ditch. It doesn't carry as much water as the ditch shows, but there has been what we call a HECRAS riverine study done on that to make sure anything we do in that size doesn't impact any properties around us, and to let us know how our buildings need to be set along that ditch right there. So that's the only additional comment I have.
There's a lot of rolling hill up and through there, right?
Yes, sir. It goes from the ditch going back toward Holly Springs Road. There's quite a lot of elevation difference. And I laid it out to try to minimize that as much as possible. That's why there's some common open spaces in there that we're going to leave.
Wasn't
and
there
some of the rougher parts.
3 lakes on that property?
There were 2 lakes. Well, there was 1 lake, 1 pond, and 1 mud hole, basically. We're getting rid of the pond that we were getting rid of is over toward the southeastern side, and it's fairly shallow. A lot of growth in it. Didn't really look like it'd be something attractive to a neighborhood there, so we decided to do away with that one and keep the major lake there, which is just a real pretty lake.
Is that little triangle off of Getwell there that's not?
Yes, sir. The lots 45 through 46, or 46, 47, 48, 43, and that little area, there was a little small pond in that area, probably about a ½ acre, I guess. Pretty shallow, though. It had a lot of growth coming up in it. It's still there, actually, so hadn't nothing been done. Unless the levee busted and I didn't know about it and it drained, that's always a possibility.
Y'all gonna just level the whole place when y'all do it, or y'all gonna try to preserve any of the tree canopies?
No, so we're going to try to preserve any tree that's in the open space, obviously is going to get preserved. Of course, where roads and small lots are, we can't do nothing about that, but there's going to be a buffer along the ditch there. There's a lot of growth right there. All that's going to be preserved. The tree growth that borders on Jefferson Estates, that's going to be preserved, and along the Gilbreth property, which this where we bought this from, that's going to be left. And there is an out parcel there that has a lot of tree growth around it. We made sure to make that all common space around that out parcel on Getwell Road as to not impact them so much. So we're going to do all we can to save them. Of course, when you have 9,500, 9,600 foot lots in those areas, there's not a lot you can do.
So there's no chance of, or is it possible, I guess, to save trees between lots?
Yes, sir. In areas where there will be minimal grading, that's always the thing I try to do, is to save all we can, because trees make lots more attractive, more valuable, so.
I didn't see anything, though, inside the plan language.
No, sir, it's not mentioned that I could find either, other than what's shown in this master plan here. That's basically would, I guess, double as a tree preservation type plan, showing where the common open spaces are and where the trees and the nature's gonna be preserved.
I would take that as, that's something you're aspiring to.
Yes, sir, that's
Not
right, that's
necessarily.
right. Anybody can tell you they can save trees on a 9,000-foot lot's telling you a story. But you always try to do the best you can.
I will tell you, I'd feel more comfortable with it if it was in writing, in the plan document.
Right. We'll be glad to add a statement to it, saying that we'd, do everything in our power to save every tree we can on the site, for sure, so.
That raises a question for me, that I understand at a certain size lot, it's almost impossible to save a tree.
Mhm.
Is it possible that there's a threshold, like 12 or 13,000 lot or higher, than try to save 1, 2 trees as the lot gets bigger?
Typically, you have to get up into that 20,000 square foot lot range to do any meaningful tree preservation on the lot itself.
On the lot itself.
Mhm. And,
But between lots, is there any?
if there's no dirt being moved between lots, that's correct, you can. There's gonna be areas that the lots across property lines are gonna be cut or filled several feet. Obviously, you can't save trees in those areas, but there'll be some areas that there's not a lot of cut or fill on those particular lots, and the trees can be saved on the lot lines, maybe a couple, especially along the rear. So.
And the question, Austin, BJ, did we discuss, and I want to remember that we did, that for those that you can't save, we go back and put new ones back in?
That's what I was about to say, is we do have an adopted tree ordinance. And table, as long as it's not for bona fide logging, that whatever he takes out, usually what it is the developer just plants a tree in the front yard. In lieu of paying the fee for mitigation. But there is an entire formula about if you lose this many trees, depending on what he saves in the common open space, on his grading plan is kind of how we calculate a lot of that.
Based on a percentage of the whole thing?
There's a lot of this site that's sage-grass fields, Most of the tree growth is limited to the areas that we can't touch anyway, because there's also other issues there that we have to avoid, so. And there are areas that do have trees, but the majority of this site, you can walk across the biggest part of it. Toward the western side, there's a lot of trees, but around that lake and up in there, there's vast amount of sage-grass fields there that we hogged the site before, so won't be a lot of trees to save in that area.
Will that lake serve as a retention for some of that runoff?
Yes, sir. That lake's gonna be modified. When I say modified, there'll be an outflow structure added to it. It's not gonna be touched as far as the shape of the lake, but the outflow structure will limit the runoff coming down through there. Pre equals post type deal, or, yeah. To limit that runoff there. And there's places we left out as common to carry that water that's gonna come out. So it wouldn't be running between lot lines and things like that.
Any other questions or comments from Mr. Smith? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here for or against this application? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Buddy Malone, 3549 Getwell Road. I own the adjoining property that this gentleman here is talking about. Don't know when y'all went been down to Jefferson Estates. I understand he's projecting 2,400 square feet homes. There's only 3 that would even come close to that. These are old homes. They're on Holly Springs. They're next to the flower shop on either side. Then you got Danny Pools. He's probably running 3,000 square feet. Better, I don't know specifics on Danny's house. Then you fall into Jefferson Estates. Jefferson Estates, adjoining this line, is building 8,000 square feet homes. I mean, it looks like castles down there. I've been here 34 years. I don't know what he's talking about preserving as far as the trees and whatnot. If you go down there, they just got through timbering it. And when I say timbered, I mean they cut everything.
On this property?
On the property. You've got a corner that has pines on it, on Getwell, on Holly Springs. Just before you get to the flower shop, they set operations up right there. From there to the backside, it's clear. They cut it. Okay, right behind, right on my fence line, it's grub, just bushes. It's there. That's where all the varmints has moved. I shake hands with coons and everything else when I get to my house now. I'm, you know, but that's the nature. I understand this. But as far as the lakes, yes, the lake he's talking about above my house is a water problem. Been a water problem ever since I've been there. Now the beavers has moved in and stopped up the spillway, which if it breaks, I got a problem. Every bit of it's gonna come down on me. Always has. I understand this. I understood it with Mr. Glenn. He kept it to a minimum. He kept it cleaned out. Now, I understand y'all can't come down there and do this kind of stuff every day. But now, 2,400 square feet, and you're gonna build right up to the ditch in the line that's got an 8,000 square foot house sitting there? This is not gonna impress Jefferson Estates at all. This house is huge. It's probably one of the biggest houses in Jefferson Estates. I understand this, but it's huge. All the houses that is in that location is way better than 3,000 square feet. My house right next there, it's got 2,900 square feet on my 5 acres. So this is what we're looking at. I appreciate the man clearing the lake out. I sure do. I've got water mocs, like I said, migrated. I understand this. I've been there for a while. Now, across Getwell, we've got one home that's probably around the 2,400 square feet thing, new home. The rest of them are large homes. We don't need to depreciate our value of our homes in the future. I understand the people trying to make money, but you start putting small houses, it's going to bring depreciation to everyone in the neighborhood. I was understanding at the other board meeting, I've talked to these people, I talked to his other people, had a good conversation outside. They were going to build reasonably, I'm not going to say large houses, but homes that's in reasons, not 2,400 square feet. This is going to bring the value not only for St. Ives, but the other people is located. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here for or against this application? Mr. Smith, you had something to address.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, I wasn't aware of the timbering that's going on out there. I knew there's going to start some clearing in the area just to do the subdivision, but I didn't want you to think I was telling you a fib. I wasn't aware of that. As far as a 2,400 square foot home, that's a minimum. If you know anything about the developer, you know he builds houses bigger than that. I think Jefferson State's minimum square footage is over there is something close to that, 2,400. Just because it's a minimum doesn't mean that's what you're going to build. So I just want to add that in there. That's the only thing I had.
Thank you.
Who's developing this?
Same guy who's doing Montclair, Butch Davis.
Bush Davis, okay.
Several developments in town. They usually build a lot bigger than the minimum usually.
Anyone else here for or against this application? Do I have a motion?
I have a motion to approve the rezoning of parcel number 307521000-00000900, which is a 54.13 acre tract located at the southwest corner of Holly Springs Road and Getwell Road in section 21, township 3 West, range 7 South, from the A Agricultural District to the PUD Planned Unit Development District, with the project text and preliminary development plan to be submitted for review and approval at a later date, based on the following findings, 1, 2, 3, 2, and 3.
Do I have a second?
Can I say something before we vote? Because I'm going to vote nay because I want to know more about what's going on. If they've already clear-cut this property and it's not in compliance with our tree mitigation standards of Hernando, I think that's a big issue. I mean, if this is the same people that did Montclair, I mean, Montclair's a nice subdivision, but I mean, they straight clear-cut it when they did it. I mean, there's not a tree left standing whenever they built on it, front or back. So, I mean, I'd like to know more. I think, you know, I always hate to table something, but I think I would vote for table it, but I'd just like to know more about what's going on out there. It sounds like you don't even know, Mr. Smith.
I know what plans happened, I just didn't know what happened yet. I didn't know they started anything. I wasn't aware of that.
Well, we noticed, because we shop at that nursery there on the corner.
And Montclair, a lot smaller lots than this. That's subdivision. Lots are very small.
Well, you told us a little while ago that y'all were gonna try to save the trees on the property, but then now you say you knew they were gonna start clear cutting it.
Well, we knew they were gonna start clearing, not clear cutting, there's a difference there. You have to clear to do construction. So, I didn't know there's any timbering going on, that's what he said, was timbering. I'd have to go out there and put my eyes on it myself. Yeah, what's there, the plan was to try to save what's there, especially in the comments. Around the lake, along the ditch, that kind of thing, that's where most of the saving and preservation is gonna go on.
So at this point, we got a first and a second on a motion. The discussion needs to be between the commissioners only. Let's keep that directed, between us. Either move forward with the motion at hand and then go from there. So if we want to discuss what you want to talk, that's fine, but we have to keep it between the commissioners only.
No, I mean,
Not the public.
that's just I think I would like to know more about what's going on out there right now so that we can address what Austin said earlier, because, I had hoped, to put in something, into the, whatever proposed motion we did, that they have to be in compliance with there has to be language inserted into the plan documents, and they have to be in compliance with the tree mitigation standards. That's where I stand on it. Seems like from Mr. Buddy, from what he came up here and said, and then what Mr. Smith said, I don't know. I don't really know what's going on out there right now.
Well, this is just a rezoning, right?
It's approval of the plan documents.
That's right, so it does serve as a preliminary plat. So this is a little both. It is a rezoning because we treat an amendment to a PUD. But the action of approving this text is approving the preliminary plat. Development plan is the preliminary plat and the zoning. As to the question about the logging, I don't know if it's a bona fide logging operation, then that's an exemption. I just don't know on this piece of property.
Logging operation.
We can't, we got discussion between the commissioners only at this point. Let us finish our vote and then we'll. So the motion is to approve.
Commissioner Jordan, could we not, a motion to approve with the condition of,
That wasn't your motion, though. So we're going to have to finish through this motion on that. Is that clear?
yeah, could I mean, it's not on record yet. Could I rescind it and say?
You have a motion and a second.
We do.
You can't abandon it.
Right, we have to finish through. Depends on how you answer to that motion. That we can go back if it's denied or not.
So I vote no to my own, is that what you're saying? Yeah. And then come back and revisit?
Exactly.
I'm okay with that, I just don't know the protocol.
That's pretty much. You want it to fail? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye. Nay. Nay, sorry.
Commissioner Brumbaugh?
Nay.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Nay.
Commissioner Jordan?
Nay.
Commissioner Hawkins?
No.
So the motion to approve this application is denied. Is there another motion on the table?
I'll make a motion to table it pending the next meeting so that we can get a little bit more information
Second.
about this status of the property. And tree canopy in particular.
And that will be the July 12th.
Yeah, is that
The motion is to table until July 12th. Am I seeing that date right, Austin? Or is it July 11th? Yeah, 12th, okay. All right, I got a motion to a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbaugh?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
The motion to table to the July 12th, 2022 meeting at 6 PM passes. July 12th, yes, sir. So Russell.
And Mr. Smith, just if you, when you come back, will you just give us some more detailed plans about what?
Wherever that
what-
is.
Okay.
I will put that in the document and resubmit to you, and might even take an aerial, show you what's there now.
That's what I was gonna
If
suggest.
we have the capability to do that, like a drone aerial or something.
Doesn't have to be an aerial, but a photograph or something. And Mr. Buddy, you may, if you can come back.
Yeah, we'll make it right. We'll put it in there.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Did you need to state anything else? Okay. All right, Austin. Item number 6, a request to approve a zoning fence height variance for Frank Herman to allow construction of 2 6-foot and 8-inch tall fence gates within the front yard setback of his lot, one on Middle Buster Road and one on Double Shovel Drive, rather than the 4-foot maximum height allowed by the ordinance, to be located on Lot 22 of Short Fork Farms subdivision, more specifically known as 1360 Middle Buster Road, located east of McInville Road on the northwest corner of Middle Buster Road and Double Shovel Drive in Section 8, Township 3 South, Range 8 West. It is currently zoned A Agricultural District.
Yes, sir. As you noted, he's asking to construct 2 gates that exceed the allowable height in the front yard. There is a picture or a rendering of the proposed gates in your staff report and pictures of the proposed locations. There is an existing split rail fence that is within the allowable height, and the brick columns and the high point of the gate are what it exceeded. There's a typo in your staff report. The home is over 6,000 square feet. It's currently zoned A, agricultural. In the discussion, the special circumstances or conditions that exist with this land or structure, the applicant response is that it's a large lot, and there's several properties which have tall gates and fences, and he feels like his family would be safer. During the site visit, we did confirm several other gates in the subdivision that do exceed the allowable height. And the lot is unusually large for it's a similar response to the little interpretation or little enforcement of the provisions of these standards would deprive his rights commonly enjoyed by other properties. Like I said, there are other gates in the subdivision that special conditions and circumstances don't result from the actions of the applicant. So the large lot open area was done prior to his purchase, and the gate restriction doesn't exist currently. That the granting of the variance would not confer on the applicant any special privilege that's otherwise denied by this ordinance. And the applicant feels that it will aesthetically upload the value of the property and show pride of ownership and safety. If approved, the applicant should still come get a fence permit available in our department. And there are proposed motions to approve, deny, and or table. And as I mentioned, there are applicant exhibits of what the gate's going to look like, the proposed locations, and aerials of the site to give you context of where it is. And Mr. Herman is available tonight, and I'm available for any questions.
Questions or comments for Austin? Austin? Is the applicant here tonight? If so, will you please come forward, stating your name and address?
My name is Frank Herman, and I live at 1360 Middle Buster Road. And I'm here because my wife wants a gate. And the reason why she wants it, because she says it's beautiful.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Herman?
Drop the mic.
He's right, it's a nice gate.
Questions or comments for Mr. Herman? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here for or against this application? Please come forward, stating your name and address. No one here for or against. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve a request to approve zoning fence height variance for Frank Herman to allow construction of 2 6'8" tall fence gates within the front yard setback of his lot. One on Middle Buster Road and one on Double Shell Road, rather than the 4-foot maximum height allowed by the ordinance to be located on Lot 22 of Short Fork Farms subdivision, more specifically known as 1360 Middle Buster Road, located east of Mackinville Road, on the northwest corner of Middle Buster Road and Double Shovel Drive, in Section 8, Township 3 South, Range 8 West, currently zoned in the A Agricultural District. Frank Herman, applicant and property owner, based upon the following findings: A through D.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, 3 people. We'll go with Terry. I'll take a pig. So, and a roll call, please.
Commissioner Thorne?
Aye.
Commissioner Brumbelow?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan?
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins?
Aye.
Motion to approve passes. Way to be honest with us too, so blame it on the wife, be honest. I mean, that's good.
My wife wants one too.
We're all there with you, buddy. We get it.
We better get that gate built. Hurry up.
All right, Austin, last item tonight is the consideration of amendments to the zoning text concerning medical cannabis.
Yes, sir. So, as you see in your staff report, the board did not take action to opt out of medical cannabis. And so the result of that was we're in. And the state will start issuing licenses 1st of July. And so this ordinance has been, rushed is not the right word, but expedited. So the proposed definitions in the zoning ordinance that we're adding are straight from the state law of what the state has classified each of the uses concerning medical cannabis are. And based on the feedback from the AG opinion, the board does have the right to regulate time, place, and manner of these types of facilities. And so with this being said, we presented the issue to the board, and the board formed a committee. This committee met on April 25th and came up with a recommendation. I subsequently took that to the second meeting in May. And I'll briefly go through some of the regulations they're proposing to amend, and they wanted to bring to you before final vote on the 21st of the Board of Aldermen. And generally speaking, they want to follow all state guidelines regarding the licensure and setback requirements of all facilities. And so it's 1,000 feet from daycares, schools, and churches. And there's very specific measurements of those facilities. And if it's a double door, it's measured from the single point of the door. And so the board's recommending the committee's recommending to follow all those state licensure requirements. In addition to this, the committee's recommending to prohibit all medical cannabis facilities in the historic district, and in addition to that, 500 feet from the courthouse measured parcel line to parcel line. And this was designed because the historic district is a bit segmented as it comes through downtown, and so 500 feet from the courthouse gave an even boundary around the courthouse. We're proposing to adopt a $1,000 business license fee, and this is based on the uncertainty that the police fire department would have to regulate. There's a lot of uncertainty with these new types of facilities, so a $1,000 business license fee was proposed. As I mentioned on the definitions, to insert exactly as written as state law what these definitions are, and with the use chart on towards the rear of your staff report in front of the opinion from the Attorney General, these definitions are listed as well as a use chart of where these definitions are proposed to be inserted. And so a C on that use chart means by conditional use, which means it'd be an additional layer of review coming back to you for approval. P is permitted by right, so it's as long as they meet the design guidelines and the state regulations, they're allowed to go there. And NP would be not permitted, and so they would not be allowed without rezoning to make application on that parcel. And then in addition to that, the proposal is to add hours of operation for dispensaries, proposed 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And again, this is due to the uncertainty expressed by the police chief of what, it may be none, but we don't know of any extra police this may be required to have. So the hours of operation set 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. are proposed. And so with the recommendation tonight from the Planning Commission, I plan to take this to the next board meeting on the 21st, which we've already advertised for, in order to get in front of those July licensures from the state. I've included maps of the historic district and that 500-foot boundary around the courthouse square. All the definitions as listed in the state law, what you can apply for through the state are listed in there. The proposed use chart and where those will be is listed in the Attorney General's opinion that basically generated all this discussion. So I'm here for any and all feedback that I can take to the board concerning this recommendation from the committee. And if you've got any questions, please let me know.
Questions or comments for Austin?
Yeah, these maps with the different color-coded districts, is those also restricted?
Yes, sir.
Each one of those districts?
Anything in a colored district is in one of the historic districts, and so a medical cannabis facility of any kind would be prohibited.
So the Commerce Street?
Yes, sir. Anything in a color would be.
Just wholly prevented on those parcels, correct?
Sir?
Just wholly, it's wholly prevented on any parcels that fall within that district as well as within that 500 feet.
That's correct.
Austin, in reference to these facilities, and am I missing it or just not seeing it, but they being built near schools, churches, where is that in here, the context there?
So when we, in the provision of following all state guidelines regarding this licensure, those distance requirements are listed in the state law of 1,000 feet between schools, churches, and daycares. And that is some of the uncertainty we're looking at, because, even though, we're going to insert this in the zoning ordinance that we will follow state law, is that on us to check, or is that a prohibition because I believe they have to submit a survey to the state before they get a license, but just to play it safe, the committee recommended to insert that language to follow the state law.
Can we propose it be more stringent than state law?
You can, yes, sir.
Can I make it impractical? And change.
What do you mean by impractical?
Make it where they just can't find it where they
In my mindset, I'm I'm looking at protecting the schools and the churches, because that's going to be your non-advocates for this, and being around a school.
So, yeah, so it's 1,000 feet from the school. Here.
But we can be more stringent.
They can't be within 1,500 feet.
So that,
One within 1,000 feet. You could increase. I think if you go too far.
so when you say 1,000 feet, is that from the center of the building radius, kind of like from the 500 feet from the courthouse?
It's very, very specific how it's written. So like it's from door to door, and if it's a double door, it's measured from the center of that double door. And if it's primary versus secondary entrance, so the state law is very specific. And the reason it's not your staff report is because it is incredibly long. It's like over 100 pages.
So just for the example, the one to 500 feet on the courthouse, where it's a radius based on the center of the building, so that is not based on the front door of the courthouse?
So that was one of our local requirements, and so that was
Okay.
it's worded a little bit different.
So the state requirements is door to door for the courthouse.
It's parcel line.
Gotcha.
What the committee did was, the committee was made up of the mayor and alder person, myself. The additional recommendations around the historic district and courthouse, those are made by, that goes from parcel to parcel. 500 feet from any parcel line. State law with regard to daycare, churches, schools, 1,000 feet.
Yeah, totally does. So let me throw a scenario. Medical cannabis dispensary, whatever type business they want to do, they find an appropriate place in Hernando, one of the commercial zones. They set up operation. Next business comes in line, they want to build a new daycare. So now the daycare can't build in that property because now they're against the regulation because they're too close to this facility.
State law speaks to that. First, and then the daycare would come after, and I believe there's no requirement. There's also a variance procedure to reduce that boundary to 500 if the daycare signs, or church or school signs off on it. But there is language in the state law that addresses a dispensary coming and then one of the other uses coming
Tell you, excuse me, you know, I can tell you that under the alcohol laws, you know, through the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, that basically if a liquor store, for example, is located and then a church comes along and opens up in the same shopping center, for example, where the liquor store is, that it can't invalidate the liquor store because it came in afterwards.
That's what I was
It's almost a situation where if you know it's there, you're going there with that knowledge, you know, as opposed to having somebody come in and set up shop right next to you after you've already been there.
Says it will be very similar to the way they enforce the alcohol laws. But the laws that have been passed as state law are much more restrictive. They're very detailed. What I can tell you is that the board opted in unanimously or wanting you to act more restricted, but I would be careful not to make it too restrictive.
Well, I don't
think 1,000 feet's very.
I'd have to spend more time studying everything before I can make any additional recommendations, you know, just off the cuff.
Right.
I mean, I don't, like you said, I don't know this, I mean, I'm aware of the state law, but I don't know it in detail enough to compare it against what we've added, the alderman, the committee's added, to then ask me to add more restrictions without knowing in full detail what I'm getting into.
Well, my statements are only intended to give you a guideline.
But you need this before, what'd you say, you're a meeting?
The timeline is the complicating factor because, you know, we received the AG opinion in May, I think, late April, and licensures are live 1st of July. So we're in this timeline of we do want to be prepared. The board's taking action to be not opting out. And so this is what the committee has said, basically follow the state law and these few.
So if we don't make any, if we don't make any changes tonight, then we're behind.
Or really just your recommendation would just go to the board of aldermen or any feedback you have. 1,000 feet, if you want to consider upping it or lowering it, or, you know, just any feedback you have for consideration. It is an ordinance text change, so, you know, procedurally, we bring it to y'all first, just for consideration.
Steve, in your legal opinion, what is too much? I mean, where do we, what is it?
I think certainly, certainly wouldn't want to double it.
But I think we should. I mean,
Yeah,
especially that.
I think that is going to probably. And, you know, I could be wrong. I don't know what the landscape
For example, where the new high school is going, I'm envisioning, not only that, but.
Excuse me, just one.
Yeah,
more.
Well, it depends on which one, for dispensary, or processing, or cultivation, because it's all treated a little bit different. But
I think I also can speak to that. We did have some discussions about that. They were concerns about your same concern.
So, it depends on the zoning district, because I know everyone's, main focus is the dispensary in downtown, but there are, there's cultivation facilities, disposal, processing, research, testing, and transportation in addition to the dispensaries. And all of those are proposed to either be a conditional use or a permitted use in commercial districts, and that's what that use chart kind of shows you. So it's kind of hard to speak on like the high school, because it's all agriculturally zoned, and so, you know.
What is Pleasant Hill there? I'm just, I know some of that's residential, but you got the C-store there that's pretty close to that area. And one quick stop or whatever. I'm just thinking, and I'm only using that as an example. Some of this is covered with, like, say, the elementary school. It falls within the historic district, so we're adding another 1,000 feet to that 500, right? Am I?
So say that one more time, I'm sorry.
So like where Hernando Elementary is now, it falls in that historic district area on the tail end of it. So it's 500 foot from there in addition to another 1,000, or just the 500?
So that would just be the 1,000. So it's 1,000 foot from a school anywhere. And so the school district, you just can't go there at all. So 1,000 feet would still apply, because we're still applicable to the state law.
There's no distance requirement for the historic district, is it? I mean, if you're, as long as you're not in the historic district, you put something across the street, if it met the other standards.
500 for the courthouse. That's right. And, you know, this discussion we're having right now is the tough part of this, because it's really easy to get, you know, have a standalone ordinance like this concerning this stuff when the state law is already like that, and then we start, and the committee have these thought processes of what point is the almost impossible answer, because there's no case law, everything is so new, and there's no really model ordinance, because we're all just kind of.
I think sidebar discussion with BJ is that we have opted in. The state laws have set out to say what is minimally required. So don't change the ordinance. And approve it.
And I'm not at all asking to deviate that. I'm asking to enhance it.
Let me strike that, restate that. They may or may not approve,
Right.
but they have indicated they will.
Again, I'm not asking for deviations. I'm looking at these certain areas only, and I do think that they are still few and far between, that there's plenty of Hernando still that could have that access. So I still think that, in my opinion, and again, there's nothing in the statute that says that what too much is, so I would like to see that number double around those areas. That's just my opinion.
Around the historic areas, what you talking about?
Well, historic area, you can't build it until you're out. I'm talking about the schools, the churches, and the daycares. Because I still feel there's plenty of Hernando, and we're still abiding by state law. We're just.
Of course.
This is a recommendation, you know.
Again, I understand.
And I think it's good to have the conversation. I think those are legitimate concerns. Those same conversations have been had on the committee. So.
Right. Well, I wish we would have been involved with the committee too, so, you know, I get it.
I'm sorry if I'm interrupting.
Well, I'll ask to come up, we're still discussing here, so.
Is 2,000 feet impractical, as you mentioned, like doubling it?
Not sure if I'm prepared to give you that opinion off the cuff. You'd have to really look at the map and see what is available.
That goes back to my earlier question. There's so much that I don't know before to make.
Well, at minimum, we have to at least be with state law. There's no doubt about that.
I'll say this. The law was written to give all say in how they want their ordinance to work. Terms they have used is and cannot make it. That has not been interpreted. There's no legal action.
There's no case law.
That's right, there's no case. Yeah.
We don't want to be the
I
first.
think that's just the kind of a, you're right. So,
But if we establish that, then they know it's available, like from those guidelines.
I think on you guys to make a recommendation.
We create a new C5 and call it Cannabis Zone.
Well, South Haven has done something very similar to that.
1 mile from Hernando High School to Walgreens, I thought it would be much shorter than that. That's what I was looking.
That's 5,000 feet.
5,000 feet, yeah.
I think the issue you run into, Mr. Jordan, is that, if you think about it, it's not so much an issue of Walgreens as the fact that, the corner of Dilworth is C2 zoning.
I was in, that's why I was just using, for example, to that intersection.
Sure.
I wasn't, I'm not
Well, the new
saying.
church is going right
I don't
there,
think,
too.
I don't think Walgreens can sell, I don't think pharmacies are approved to be dispensaries.
But there will be a church next to it.
The church is going right
That's
next
true,
to
too.
that.
That's a good point, yeah. I was just using that as an example for,
What was South Haven doing? They did a C5, like a cannabis
Create a
zone?
medical district, and
Medical.
inside that district is what they have to get.
Doesn't prevent, but it does contain it.
Well, and, to me, that's the, kind of the crux of the question, all right? If you don't want it, then we should have opted out, okay? But we have not opted out, and so that in itself says, now we have to figure out how we're going to permit it.
And
Saying,
Mr. Carter.
so I guess what I'm
might-
saying is, in terms of not having it at all, that cow is already out of the barn.
Same with Mr. Carter, my opinion, I'm neutral on the whole subject, one way or another. I see the pros and cons either way, and I've been in all the discussions. But I respect the people that
Sure.
would rather have opted out. But at the same time, we need to respect the people that opted in, because they're waiting to start these new businesses.
Sure.
Right? So they're looking for the green light to come up here and say, hey, I want to open this farm, or I want to open this dispensary. So how do you balance that? Still giving those that want to pursue this industry. I don't have the answer. That was just a rhetorical question.
Apologize, I don't either. That's the $1 million question.
I think the
Well,
other
I think
thing
you
to
go, I
keep in
think you just have to
mind-
go back to the vote. I mean, when you have a majority of the people that approved, more than 74% even in the city of Hernando, also DeSoto County, I think you can't override the will of the people. I think that's a bad decision. And I think, if you look at the hearings and the committee meetings and the vote itself on the Senate floor and the House floor, you have to take in consideration that the state spent numerous hours due diligence on this, and then the city went above and beyond that, right? So, I mean, they've put an additional level to meet. I think that's, the people of Hernando elected the mayor and the alderman, and I
Was
think
that the 74% was the vote?
I think it was like 73.5 or whatever it was. It was a very high margin.
I think the thing to understand also is, this is like any zoning situation. The fact that you adopt this does not close the door on future changes if issues should arise.
Are you saying that, okay, again, I'm just playing in my head scenario, we recommend this, it gets voted, it gets approved. We start seeing different applications come before us. And then at some point, year or 2 years down the road, something happens and now we've got some kind of and that's when we come back and say, okay, there's something we didn't see 2 years ago. We need to reevaluate the ordinance.
I mean, if you think about any conditional use permit, which if you look at the matrix that's in your staff report, most of those are conditional use permits, okay? Any conditional use permit, you're going to develop a feel for things over time. You're going to develop an understanding, you're going to develop a historical record in a sense. And, in the ways that we've always handled conditional use permits, we have to establish a time limit, and that time limit may initially be short until we see how things go. That's not an uncommon practice. We discussed that, briefly tonight with the Likens towing service. So that's all I'm saying is that, there is, people like to think of zoning as being something that's carved in stone, but it's not. It can always be amended.
Well,
Pass the ordinance and change it, you just can't make it less than the state has prescribed.
Right.
well, to Mr. Carter's point, hindsight's 20/20. I wish we were on the committee because we're going to be first line of defense. We're the ones that have to have these discussions, either say yay or nay.
Your vote tonight is a recommendation.
But
It's not the end all, be all.
And everything looks spot on, except I feel we should be, as a city, more stringent protecting the areas of our schools, churches, and daycares. I don't feel that my opinion of doubling that number is too stringent, because there's nothing that says it is. Commissioner Jordan giving us kind of a look at the high school from Walgreens being, what was it?
5,000 feet.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, that's still not enough, but I feel like we set a precedence with a recommendation tonight on that.
That's a good point with that case, because if you look at that little strip mall where the Domino's is at, somebody could put a dispensary in there, and that's within the ordinance.
See, we did, it's a Keiko's daycare.
Keiko's is right there. Oh, and that little, yeah, right there.
There are little things like that throughout the city, but I'm just probably restate my opinion that you asked me for. How much? I don't know.
Yeah, that's, I just didn't know if there was something established on what.
Yeah.
Too much
don't know,
was.
so I think you should.
Unless there's a tiebreaker, I don't get a vote or a motion. So,
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just speaking my opinion as what, if I was in, the other chairs, my recommendation would be so.
Here's what this gentleman has to say.
Is there anything else for them between the commission and? Yes, sir. Would you like to come up and speak?
Yes, please. I apologize for interrupting. I just, and this isn't so much a comment on this issue as a proposed solution to one of your problems. Apparently, we have a site selected for a new high school. I'm completely unaware of where it is. Sounds like Mount Pleasant, and I'm guessing maybe Mackinville. But in as much as we blocked off historic districts as no-fly zones for medical marijuana, could we not do that same thing with the proposed high school site? That's all I wanted to suggest.
All right, anybody else got any input on this from the commission?
We couldn't put it to say 2,000 from schools and 1,000 from churches and daycares. You could do that, which is kind of what would apply to what you're talking
Pretty much stuff in most of our ordinances, so.
I guess I'm thinking down at the state, down in Jackson, they did who knows how much research to determine what's gonna be equitable as far as distances and stuff. Then we had this committee that who did, I'm sure these same questions popped up, everyone. What did 5,000, 3,000, 2,000? And so I think we kind of, not necessarily splitting hairs up here a little bit with us kind of looking at it, and we got our opinions, which is great. No issue with any of that. But the due diligence that they've done at Jackson, due diligence that this committee has done, has kind of laid a foundation of maybe the direction we should go. Now, if you want to go 1,500 maybe, 5,000 from Walgreens to the school, I thought it was a lot closer than that, but it's not, so.
And mine, it was very approximate based
Right,
on.
okay, I got you. And
Google
then,
Maps,
so, threw me off and all.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I had a senior moment. But, oh, and like what BJ said, when we opted in, it's at the bar. Now, we in here, so, and the state has the minimum standards, and maybe if you want to go, maybe a little more, 1,500 maybe or something, and like he said, it can always be adjusted. You can always have an amendment to something. If we find out, we've already 500 square, none in the historical district, 500 street from the courthouse, so we have been a little more stringent. And I agree totally with what you're saying. It shouldn't be, but no matter where it is, somebody's gonna go there, so it doesn't make a difference if they're driving by, if they know where it is, they can go there. So it really doesn't make, I'm kind of thinking just leave it like it is, because if it's in Hernando, hey, you know it's over there, okay, let's go over there. So it's not gonna make that much difference if we say it's farther away. If it could be 10 miles away, hey, let's go there. It's kind of the more I'm thinking and talking as I talk, it really doesn't make a difference where it is. If the person wants to go there, they're gonna drive there.
Well, you make a valid point, but I think what Mr. Carter was saying is that if it's out of sight, out of mind, then it's less likely to think about it. So a farther distance away from schools, daycares.
But see, with these phones, it's never out of sight, out of mind. It's one person knows about it and publish it out there, and now everybody knows where it is.
Do we have a reason or an answer to the committee came up with the number they came up with? Or I don't think they just pulled that out of nowhere. Is there a reasoning for why they came up with the number they came up with, the committee?
On the 500 from the courthouse?
Yeah.
I think the historic district.
Or I'm talking about the 1,000.
At the state level, you mean?
Well, no, I'm talking about
The state did that.
You're talking about the additional recommendations that the
Yeah.
committee has come up with.
Yeah.
It was just discussed, back and forth. We have something specific.
The 500-foot rule was introduced to fill in the gaps of the various historic districts. So the historic district is not a solid district around the courthouse.
Yeah, like Robert was talking about.
So you're talking about the 1,000.
No, the 500 for the additional.
Any other discussion? Do we have a motion? Or is there a motion on this to recommend?
It would be helpful just to say you considered it and you agree with the committee's recommendation.
Okay.
Made a recommendation and someone could second that.
Okay. So there's just a motion to recommend this either more in strength or as is, and then a second.
That's right.
We're not gonna take a roll call after that, is that right? Or we all have to be in favor since it's a motion?
And we did talk about, I guess, which is the $1,000 business license fees, not really it's not really something we get to.
It's just part of the recommendation of what, it's going to be structured in the
That
ordinance.
would be more of the Board of Aldermen, though, to state that. We don't have.
Saw that and seemed
We have
I
nothing
think
to do
it's
with it.
all I think it's all a recommendation. You can recommend anything or more, you just can't recommend less.
Business license fees that are $1,000?
No.
Well, we have like Kroger and Walmart.
Based on
it-
their business.
Yeah. Depending on the inventory, the number of employees is how the state law is structured. And so we have a few that are high, but consistently they're probably about $50, $100, depending on the number of employees.
Does anybody like to make a recommendation?
Let me ask that one
Yeah,
other
go
question.
ahead.
Speaking of the business license fee, there's nothing that says what that should or shouldn't be, correct?
No, sir,
From the
that's
state level on the business licensing fee, is nothing that,
not a recommendation on the local level. They do have licensure fees, which are pretty high, but no recommendations on our local level.
Want to see small businesses succeed, paying $1,000 up front. You know, that's one step back, but I guess you gotta have more capital than that.
These aren't small businesses. These are major corporations, dispensaries.
Yeah, this isn't gonna be a, yeah.
Like to make a recommendation.
well, I make a recommendation that we, with the recommendations provided by the committee that was submitted to us.
Second.
Oh, I guess we roll call that.
We'll call it up or down, it still moves forward. So.
Yes, that's correct.
Commissioner Thorne? Commissioner Brumble?
Yay.
Commissioner Ashworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Jordan? Commissioner Hawkins?
There is no motion to approve or deny, or pass, so.
That's all the items I have on the agenda. I do, if you hang around just real quick after me, I'll grab your picture for the website as well.
And there's no other business. Do we have someone a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Picture, I didn't comb my hair.